Ladies and gentlemen, this is the big moment we've all been waiting for. You are going to see the most fabulous dream car ever made. And I think you'll agree with me that if tomorrow is going to look like this, it can't come too soon.
In the 1950s, the stylist dominated the American car industry and dreamed up cars of the future that looked like this.
Thunderbird 2 to Control Tower. We are about to take off on the highway of tomorrow. Stand by.
It takes a very special combination of talents to create a new car. The stylist doesn't just sit up on a cloud dreaming up fantastic shapes for the cars of tomorrow. He is a very practical dreamer.
A practical and profitable dreamer. But to what extent is the designer of today still a peddler of dreams?
One of the most important properties a successful design has got to have when it hits the road is emotional appeal. You gotta look at that thing and say, wow, I want it, I want it.
Excitement is the word, an exciting automobile. Like movie stars or architecture, boats or anything. Everybody likes, I say a shark is more exciting than a grouper. It takes certain flair and action to give you a good looking thing. I say Barrymore's profile, he didn't look like he fell down an elevator shaft. He was a handsome man.
In Auburn, Indiana, one of the world's greatest car designers is feted annually in the town where he built his cars 50 years ago.
I think the aesthetics are pretty much a matter of proportion and form. The object has to be something that looks right on the highway. I think we captured that feeling in the Cord. You can walk around a Cord and it has no ugly side. It's good from any angle. That was true of some of the Duesenbergs that I did too. I was extremely happy with them from that standpoint, and I still am. At the time I built them, I probably didn't even think I'd be here by this time, but I get old and the cars get younger. That's the strange part of it. The cars keep coming back every year and they look like they did 50 years ago. I mean, if I were to do them over, I wouldn't change a thing about them.
The public's love and admiration for these past creations is evident. But how does the modern designer decide what car the public wants to buy?
We don't go out and ask them what they want us to do in a new passenger car. They know what they like and what they don't like about what's happening right now. But then the designer takes the information about now and projects it 4 years ahead.
Do you think the fashion designers go up and down the Champs-Élysées asking the women what kind of dresses they want? Why, never. You tell them what they want. They don't know what they want. A stylist should set a style and that's it, and not have a committee come up and tell them how to do it. No good.
It was Alfred P. Sloan, president of General Motors from 1923, who put the power in the hands of the stylist with the annual model change. Harley Earl, hired straight from Hollywood, was put in charge of creating the dream machines. And from Earl's studios poured forth his stylistic excesses as he interpreted his fantasies in chrome and sculptured steel. The interiors were parodies of aircraft flight decks. And in the rear, the obsession with jet aircraft was repeated in the ever more elevated tail fins. All this vanity and nonsense was put on show at the annual Motorama, which presented the dream cars alongside the slightly more humdrum production models.
Ooh, what a dreamy ride!
The first Motorama was in 1949.
Okie dokie, GM!
they'll certainly be wedded to their new olds with its full-width body, oversized windshield, hug-the-road grills, wrap-around bumpers, and built-in ventilating system. That gown, by the way, is not standard equipment with the car, even though it matches the Olds' Futuramic styling. This is the incomparably beautiful Roadmaster, styled for the atomic age. Dynaflow is standard equipment on this model. Again, Buick raises its head proudly in a patrician family of motor cars, cars that proclaim America's industrial supremacy.
The Sabre, supreme promise of more and better things for more people in the world of tomorrow.
Harley Earl was really the pioneer of design, and he wanted individuality. When he was there, he used to say, if you go by a schoolyard and the kids don't whistle, back to the drawing board. And he wanted identity. I think he'd be sick to see the stuff that's running around today. He wanted things different, and he believed in leading and not following.
This is the Victor, the most exciting new car for years.
The Motorama idea was catching. But in London in 1957, the attempt to make the Victor look victorious lacked the Hollywood touch.
A touch of glamour that befits a star inside the Ritz or in a motor car. And oh, what styling! No wonder that her eyes are smiling, and that it's true to say a lovely model is the star today.
Back in Detroit, marketing madness had flown out of control.
In this car, you feel like everything's coming up roses.
The 1977 Thunderbird cleared for takeoff.
For 1977, a completely new Thunderbird idea takes wing. A new Thunderbird size. This trimmer Thunderbird was born for flight, but most surprising, comes with a down-to-earth price of $54.34.
The best flying car ads were for what they call the airborne B-58 Buick. It's the new face of fashion, a new feeling of flight.
She walks in beauty like the night. She rides in Buicks like a bird in flight.
You're so right.
It was Ned Jordan in the 1920s who revolutionized car advertising. He built an unremarkable car called the Playboy, and yet around this machine he spun a web of words that had nothing to do with nuts and bolts. His lyrical copy, largely directed at women, aimed at raising a sigh and a smile and a sail.
The famous ad shows this cowboy riding alongside the car, and the ad is entitled Somewhere West of Laramie. And it begins somewhere west of Laramie. There's a bronco-busting, steer-roping girl who knows what I'm talking about. She can tell what a sassy pony, that's a cross between greased lightning and the place where it hits, can do with 1,100 pounds of steel and action when he's going high, wide, and handsome. The truth is, the Jordan Playboy was built for her. Now, I don't even know what that means exactly, but
it's
I mean,
car poetry.
I guess it's poetic license.
And Jordan's flights of fancy have been followed by even higher flyers.
Hey, look. New action for the cat set. Our new symbol of driving excitement. Mercury Cougar XR7. Bold, aggressive, richly luxurious. And now there are more Cougars to excite you. Smartly styled, smartly priced. Come on, join the cat set. Catch a Cougar of your own.
It's often been suggested that in most car advertising there is implicit sexual content. Have you found that to be true?
Without a doubt. Without a doubt. I mean, sometimes it is quite explicit. as the Chevrolet ad in the 1950s that said every woman needs a second love, and that second love should be her Chevrolet.
Or that ad from the 60s, I bought my Datsun out of wedlock. I mean,
Yes.
You can't get more explicit than that.
Or even an ad like this DeSoto ad from 1957 that says, this baby can flick its tail at anything on the road. That isn't specifically sexual, but there's a certain macho quality about it. In fact, it is often said that one of the many reasons for the failure of the Edsel was that it didn't have the right sexual configuration, that it looked, that the front of the Edsel looked too much like a woman's genitalia. And that was why it wasn't phallic enough to succeed.
And now for the moment I'm sure you've all been looking forward to. A look at the newest member of the Ford family of fine cars, the Edsel.
Those brave words announced what is certainly the greatest marketing and financial catastrophe the world's motor industry has ever seen.
Edsel, the car that is already making automotive history for Ford Motor Company. A new and different car in every respect, yet with a classical element of conservatism in its styling, which will give it maximum appeal. Its flowing, graceful lines, sculptured into the sheet metal, are clean and dignified. Yet it is excitingly different from anything on the road today.
The people obviously thought they were going to get something more than we gave them.
Something more than a car, even.
Something more than a car, that's right. As I said one time, when these people find out it's got 4 wheels and 4 doors, they're not going to like it.
Edsel will offer in its 4 series a total of 18 body styles, including a full line of station wagons. Every one of them will be tops in its field in styling, performance, and features.
Now, I had said that the car was going to look different, and I still hold to that. No one will forget the eyebrows of the back or the oval front. But what the people read into that, I don't know, but it certainly wasn't going to look like an automobile. And I don't know what it was supposed to look like in their minds. And the media helped them on this. They were having a field day with this car. For 2 solid years, they talked about nothing else.
The problem with the Edsel was that it was conceived in the mid-1950s when car manufacturers could do no wrong or could not go too far with tail fins and triple turbine takeoff drive, and it was introduced in the late 1950s, late 1957 and 1958, by which time there was a kind of economic depression and the kind of swell feelings of the 1950s had pretty much eroded.
But there's always someone who loves a lemon. Even though the Edsel lost Ford $300 million and was universally reviled as the greatest and sourest of lemons, it's still loved and cherished by a perversely faithful few. In what he appropriately calls the Lemon Grove in deepest Pennsylvania, Farmer Hugh Leslie dotes on 132 mostly moribund Edsels.
I see the Edsel has just been voted one of the 10 worst cars ever made. Why do you like it?
Oh, it's a very unique car. It's different from any other car on the road, and the Ford Motor Company designed it that way. They wanted a car that when you looked at it going a block away, you could tell it was an Edsel. It had to be something different.
You 132 Edsels. Why so many?
Well, they have to be someplace.
Since about 1930, the stylists were dominant all the way through until about the late 1960s. It was a process where stylistic pornography prevailed over engineering integrity. And the merchandising strategy was not innovation. It was style in order to get people to buy their cars and turn them over every 3 or 4 years. The turnover was very key. And that way, the critical expectation level of motorists was controlled, so they wouldn't say, why don't you give us better brakes or crash-worthy cars or high fuel efficiency? Instead, they would say, oh, you're giving us style, you're giving us chrome, tail fins, hood ornaments, different choices of color.
Although Ford failed to fool the public with the Edsel, with the Mustang, their marketing and design were triumphant.
This is the moment of truth, the production car, the work of the stylist.
Introduced in 1964, this was the most successful all-new model ever. In 3 years, Ford sold 1.5 million of them. But beneath the snazzy styling, the Mustang was simply old hat. It proved to be a sparkling nail in the coffin of Detroit.
And it's a moon-shooting performance car with sports options that stagger the imagination. Can make a swinger out of any man.
Mustang is a state of mind. Look into the eyes of any Mustang owner. We're living.
The auto companies in Detroit's formula for selling for about 30 years, starting in the late 30s, was to appeal to the dreams, the wish fulfillment, the psychological whimsy and fantasy of motorists. Now in Sweden, Saab and Volvo did not do that. They appealed to the sensibleness of motorists for durable, common sense transportation. What's the difference between Swedes and Americans? The difference is that the auto companies in America had a very low analysis of the public's needs, and in Sweden they sold transportation. In Detroit they sold fantasy.
Much earlier, although the Americans had strayed away from practical, cheap transport, the Germans hadn't. And one man must take the credit.
Unsere Motorentechnik steht jetzt in ihren Leistungen mit in den ersten Reihen der Spitzenleistungen der ganzen Welt.
Adolf Hitler commanded that a car be built of sturdy design, easy to repair, capable of high cruising speeds, and to accommodate the whole family. This was to be the people's car, the Volkswagen.
Beweisen können wir dies aber an dem Wachstum.
At the 1936 Berlin Motor Show, Ferdinand Porsche presented the Führer with his creation. Turned down by the Allies after the war as not worth a damn, over 20 million VWs have appeared on roads around the world, conquering even the chauvinistic American market.
The Volkswagen captured the imagination of the opinion makers of the United States. While it was small and sparse and terribly noisy and underpowered, it was accepted by the upscale segment of this market. And this is one of the great mistakes that Detroit made.
Oh, what's this? The Big M. Big, isn't it? Beautiful, too. The bold, massive grille of this Mercury Monterey station wagon. The bold, massive taillights of this roomy Mercury Monterey sedan. The whole low, long sweep of the big Mercury Montclair coupe.
These massive chrome jukeboxes on wheels that they were convincing themselves were what America wanted. Here comes this lunatic car, this little bubble, this VW with this 30 horsepower engine in the back. Once that German functionalism became part of the American buying habit, that was the end.
The end indeed, as Detroit lost out to the Germans in engineering and in styling to the Italians.
This wind tunnel was born in 1970. At that time, we were intending to make this wind tunnel the first in Italy to make the car go faster. Then it happened, the War of Kippur and the energy crisis, and the objective was turned upside down. That is, not so much important to go fast, not so much important the sports side, but the fuel economy.
The search for greater efficiency that started in Europe took a quantum leap when the Japanese car makers joined the fray. Intensive testing and research to produce more economical, reliable, and safer cars left the Americans ever further behind. Even for the greatest marks, style and mystique alone are not enough. These Coventry cats must now prove themselves in the dust and blistering heat of Arizona. But this endless search for efficiency, undertaken in the wind tunnel and on the test track, has had one unforeseen but perhaps inevitable consequence: uniformity.
I was in Washington recently, came out of a lawyer's office, and I showed them there were 5 cars parked in the street. General Motors, Ford, Chrysler, and a German car, and a Japanese car. My God, they all looked alike. I had to walk around the front to see the grill to know what they were.
We don't want to be like everybody else. We think we need something with a face and a character that's our own. And we can't do it like we used to do it with all the chrome hanging on the car. The design is not now the moldings put on the car. The design is the shape of the car.
The 50s was America's Elizabethan age, and it was the golden age of America, when the freeways were created, when people actually spoke confidently about traveling to the moon, when there was actually a tangible vision of the future. I mean, that's something we've since lost. Then American cars, they use fins, which are derived from jet airplanes. They laid on chrome with trowels. They offered more consumerist options than ever before. It was a whole world which evoked you know, a consumer society which is forever improvable by more and more choice and, you know, more and more satisfied demand. In a way, it was a heroic period, entirely without cynicism. I mean, look at the American car 25 years on. I mean, a whole succession of indecisive, incompetent, or just plain immoral presidents. And what do you find? You find the American car an appalling bit of testament to corporate indecision and lack of character.
We outfend ourselves and get grotesque lines, and the Europeans really like the cleaner car, and there's a combination of both.
I think in the same way that that Hollywood movies have really lost a kind of innocence, I think car advertising lost its innocence because of a lot of things: the Vietnam War, Watergate, and certainly the consumer movement. People just wouldn't believe it if you came out with a car today that had triple turbine takeoff. And in fact, there are a lot of government-mandated safety standards and regulations and mileage figures that do have to go into the ad. And I think more and more advertising in the 70s and 80s became fairly apologetic. And now many ads at this point advertise cars that you should buy a certain car because you get a great discount on it, or you get a rebate, or 9.9% financing, or because the car will last you 10 years and won't rust. Yeah. Compare that to the Jordan Playboy ad, when a car was something that would just take you into a whole other romantic world. It's a completely different thing now.
The best car designers are in some way responsive to public mood, but also anticipate it to a degree. So the latest generation of cars, at least the most successful ones, are responding to the designer's perception that the public has a taste for technology, a taste for detail, and a taste for cars which look efficient and look responsible and look as though they have a heavy investment of engineering.
All the charisma of the automobile is going down the drain, and I think it'll come back because the people will want it to come back. You watch. My way's going to win.
If you would like to know more about the car